Building. Construction complete.
What's up guys, it's Salty Mike here, and I'm going to be presenting my first Oathbreaker deck, Jace Beleren and Contentious Plan. If you are living on the island of Guam, make sure that you check out new box seats. They are our local game store here on the island of Guam. They have everything that we need for Magic. They have playmats, they have dice, they have of course your single cards and your booster packs, as well as your card sleeves to keep them protected. Alright, in any case, let's get right into the deck tech. So, Jace Beleren is a legendary planeswalker, right? And the particular version I have is the signature spellbook Jace, so really flavorful on that in my opinion. So his ability is +2, each player draws a card, -1, target player draws a card, and -10, target player puts the top 20 cards of their library into their graveyard. And my signature spell, as Contentious Plan, is just a sorcery for 1 and a blue that says proliferate and draw a card. Now, if you're not familiar with what proliferate does, basically anything that has counters on it, you get another one of. And you can do this for any counters that are on the battlefield. So if somebody has infect counters, you can give them another infect counter. If somebody has a +1/+1 counter on a creature, you can do that. And of course, if you have a planeswalker, you can give it an additional loyalty counter. So this deck is basically, we just want to draw a bunch of cards and control the table until we get into our win condition. And we have a couple different things that we can do, and we're going to get into that towards the end after I kind of go over the rest of the deck with you guys. So this deck is split up into two different categories, basically. It is the value package and the control package, which makes sense because we're in blue, and that's basically what blue is known for, drawing a bunch of cards and controlling the table. So let's start with our value cards. Well, I guess we could start with the lands, but I mean, it's basically just 24 islands, and that does it. You can add a Gaia Reach Sanitarium or a Kikokoro for additional draw card value on your lands. However, I have found that I am perfectly fine with just having the 24 islands and my commander. In any case, let's get into the value cards themselves. First, we have Brainstorm, Opt, Impulse, which is a little bit different. It's not straight card draw. To look at the top 4 cards of your library, you put one of them to your hand, and then the rest go on the bottom. Frantic Search is kind of cool. You draw 2 cards, then you discard 2 cards, and then you untap. So you basically get to draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards for free. Call to Mind is definitely good for recursion for instants and sorceries that you'll need, particularly counter spells or removal. Return target instant or sorcery card from the graveyard to your hand. Windfall is a sorcery. Each player discards his or her hands and draws cards equal to the greatest number of cards equal this way. This is a value card, however it can combo with another control card that we do have, which we'll go over later. Psychic Spiral, I consider a value card because it shuffles all of your cards from your graveyard back into your library. It's another way to stop one of my opponents from like completely milling me out, as well as giving me an opportunity to mill somebody else out because of its other part of the text where a target player puts that many cards off the top of his or her library into the graveyard. Blue Sun Zenith, because if we have just a bunch of mana, we can dump it to just draw a bunch of cards and find answers or our win con. Baral, Chief of Compliance, one of the few creatures we have in this deck, a legendary creature, Human Wizard, 1/3 for 1 and a blue. Instant and sorcery spells are 1 less to cast, and whenever a spell or ability you control counters a spell, you may draw a card, and if you do, discard a card. So it's value in that not only are we reducing mana cost for our cards, but we're also able to draw more cards. Next creature is a 1/1 flying Thrumming Bird. Thrumming Bird is whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you proliferate. So once again, we're trying to put as many counters on our planeswalker as possible. Flux Channeler, another proliferate. Whenever you cast a non-creature spell, you proliferate. So definitely really valuable in this deck where we have most of the deck being non-creature spells. Elixir of Immortality, another way to shuffle our graveyard back into our library and with an additional bonus of gaining back 5 life. Ever-Watching Threshold is kind of a deterrent card. So it's an enchantment that whenever an opponent attacks you or a planeswalker you control with one or more creatures, you draw a card. Jace's Sanctum for more value. Instant and sorcery spells are one less to cast, and whenever you cast one, you scry one. Leyline of Anticipation, because you can, if you have it in your opening hand, you can start with it immediately on the battlefield, and everything has flash. Well, everything you control has flash. And then Arcane Melee, a little bit hefty, but it helps us in the long run because instant and sorcery spells are 2 less to cast. Now, going into the control cards, we're going to start a little bit with some target removal. So we got Turn to Frog. Until end of turn, target creature loses all abilities and becomes a 1/1 blue frog. So we can have one of our opponent's creatures basically just become a dud and maybe run into one of the few creatures that we have and die. Also, we have Snap, so that way we can basically return somebody's creature to their hand for free. And we also have 2 kicker cards, Into the Royal and Blink of an Eye. So return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. If it was kicked, then draw a card. And the interesting thing about these two is that kicker costs are still cost as like an additional cost, and they still go into the cost of the card as you cast it. So there are cost reducers actually help in this case. So you can actually, if you have Arcane Melee on the field, Into the Royal and Blink of an Eye cost 2 with the kicker, and with 2 blue with the kicker instead of 4. And then our target removal / board wipe for the deck is Cyclonic Rift, everybody's favorite. Just kidding, not everybody's favorite, everybody hates it. But indeed, it does reset the board, and it is only 1 board wipe in the entirety of our 60 card deck. And it will definitely put our opponents behind if they're getting too much for us. That being said, we do have a pretty hefty control package. So we're starting with Arcane Denial, that counters the target spell. Also Counter Spell. Unwind, which counters a non-creature spell that untaps our 3 lands. Dream Fracture, which counters a spell, then they draw a card and you draw a card. Dissolve, which counters a spell, then you scry. Archmage's Charm, which you can choose an option. You counter a spell, you can draw 2 cards, or gain control of a non-land permanent with converted mana cost 1 or less. You can Rewind, which is 2 and blue for counter target spell and untap 4 lands. And we also have Put Away, which is a 2 and 2 blue counter target spell, and you may shuffle up to 1 target card from your graveyard into your library. Again, a recursion card. More than likely, we're going to get a card that also helps shuffle our entire library, or it's just something that we really need back. So we have another Planeswalker in the deck, Narset, Parter of Veils. We talked about Windfall earlier, and Narset, Parter of Veils is the card that this combos with really well. Her static ability is each opponent can't draw more than 1 card each turn. So by doing that, we basically just let them only have 1 card, and they're basically top decking for the rest of the game. And then for her minus ability, she's -2. Look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-creature, non-land card from among them and put them into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. It is extra value, but really what we want is that static ability. And then we have Teferi, Mage of Zhalfir. He is a legendary human wizard, 3/4 with flash. Creatures that you own and aren't on the battlefield have flash. Each opponent can only cast spells anytime he or she could cast a sorcery. So again, it kind of makes sure that your opponents can only play on their turn, and you can play any creature just about at any time. And it is important that we do play some things with flash or creatures with flash, because now we're going to go into our win conditions. And this one is kind of the awkward one. One of them is kind of taxed to our commander already, right? So our -10 ability on Jace Beleren is already target player puts the top 20 cards of his or her library into the graveyard. And that can kind of go into a mill strategy where we just can shoot somebody and a third of their library is gone, because Oathbreaker is a 60 card format, right? So that's a lot of cards to be milling somebody out for. But we have another Planeswalker that kind of helps with this strategy. Jace Memory Adept, 3 blue for a Planeswalker with 4 loyalty. +1, draw a card. target player puts the top card of his or her library into the graveyard. His 0 ability is target player puts the top 10 cards of his or her library in the graveyard. And then his -7 ability is any number of target players draws 20 cards. So we can feed into this mill strategy, kind of, sort of, but it's not really the main thing that we're trying to do. But, I mean, still, putting on, like, if we're able to ult Jace, even our commander, that gets rid of a third of somebody's library. And then we have our second Jace that if we ult him as well, then that gets rid of another third of somebody's library. That's a pretty powerful effect. One that I have yet to get off, and I'm hoping that I do manage to at one point. However, this deck's main win condition is the next 2 cards that I'm going to talk about, which is Laboratory Maniac and Labman Jace. So, Laboratory Maniac is a human wizard that's a 2/2. If you would draw a card while your library has no cards in it, you win the game instead. And Jace, Wielder of Mysteries, basically says the same thing as his static ability. But then he has a +1 that target player puts the top 2 cards of his or her library into the graveyard, and then you draw a card. And then when you -8 draw 7 cards, then if your library has no cards in it, you immediately win the game. So that's really the whole point of this deck, is drawing a bunch of cards and then trying to get to this point where we get to our alternate win condition by hopefully controlling the table long enough that we can get there. And this mill strategy doesn't necessarily go, it isn't the mainline strategy to win against an opponent, but it is an option. And the nice thing is that all of our mill cards, if you will, say target player. It doesn't care that it's target opponent, so we now can take our abilities and we can mill ourselves the top 20 cards or draw the top 20 cards and get into our win condition to possibly end the game. So, any case, guys, that's the deck tech for Oathbreaker Jace Beleren. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Again, this is not the only way to build Jace Beleren and Contentious Clan. This is just a way to build it. And Oathbreaker is a relatively new format where just about anything goes. I mean, it's another eternal format, just like Commander, and just like Commander, it is open to every card in the game with the exception of their ban list. So, I mean, the possibilities out there are endless. You can build the same Jace Beleren and Contentious Clan in a completely different way than I did, and you would still have a pretty powerful deck. So, but this is just the way that I took it, and I hope that you guys enjoyed it. Love you guys. I'll see you guys in the next video.